It's obvious that there's incredible chaos going on in Canada right now. We know that the trucker convoy got to Ottawa and they were met with the heavy hand of the Canadian government. Now there's a lot of talk going on around freedom and mandates and what should actually be occurring and how the government should be responding. It reminded me of this quote from Epictetus that said, "Is freedom anything else than the right to live as we wish? Nothing else." And that's ultimately what I think most citizens want, is they simply want to be left alone. Now, there's been a lot of hot takes on the internet, lots of viral tweets, plenty of people advocating for their view of the world. But the single best perspective that I've seen is a recent post by David Sachs, where he said, "A social credit system arrives in Canada." Now, I'm not going to spend a bunch of time reading everything, but there's 4 major points that I took away. The first is that for years, ideologues have used accusations of bigotry to hound people from their jobs, kick them off social media, and rescind their right to participate in the online economy. However, many observers shrugged off these cases as outliers, just fringe examples that could be ignored because they affected unsympathetic individuals. But now we have a wide-ranging group of working-class people and their supporters who are being financially deplatformed for civil disobedience. So how exactly is this possible? Well, pretty simply, it's because the term terrorism, the definition of that word, has been expanded to include everything from angry moms fighting school boards to literally people just posting on the internet. Now, as Sachs clearly articulates, as we've seen over the last 20 years, terrorism is the magic word by which any curtailment of rights and expansion of government power can be justified. Absolute insanity. Now, if we go ahead and we look that American citizens must never be labeled terrorists simply for exercising their constitutional rights to speak freely, to worship freely, or to assemble peacefully in protest. Of course, an act of violence committed in service to a radical cause is terrorism, whether committed in Baghdad or in Brooklyn. And Sachs then finishes up his piece and he says, "Those of us in the free world have been asked to suspend many of our freedoms for the sake of our collective health during this pandemic. But asking us to compromise our right to peaceful protest or to have our finances seized without due process of law in the name of a fake emergency can never be made normal. In the words of Justice Gorsuch, even if the Constitution has taken a holiday during this pandemic, it cannot become a sabbatical." Now, my takeaway from all of this is that Canada has awakened the Western world. Canada woke up the West to the perils of financial censorship. And ultimately, what we know is that regardless of what your government, what your financial institution wants to do to you, even if they continue to overreach, if they continue to encroach on your rights, there is now censorship-resistant technology. Bitcoin is unstoppable. Bitcoin is inevitable. And what we are watching is that a decentralized digital currency is being adopted by hundreds of millions of people around the world. Regardless of what your government does, regardless of what your bank does, they cannot stop you from buying, selling, holding, or transacting in a peer-to-peer network with Bitcoin. And so ultimately, if you would not trust your enemy with the power to conduct financial sanctions or censorship, then you shouldn't want anyone to have those powers, because eventually they'll be turned against you. And at that moment, you're going to need Bitcoin. Start studying now, start learning. Bitcoin is freedom technology, and ultimately, Bitcoin will be in the hands of everyone.